Good morning, Tom. It is fabulous to have you here. And good evening,
Yeah,
because
good evening from Australia.
yeah, the show is on the road this week. So we've got
Yeah.
me here in the UK and you in Australia. So hopefully we won't have any connection issues.
No, all good. Yeah, hopefully.
But it's wonderful to have you here. I know that you're a leadership and career development coach, specializing in data tech professionals. So we are sort of birds of a feather, both coming from the tech background.
Yeah,
I know that you recently changed jobs and you're implementing coaching within your role. Um,
yeah,
so it's going to be really interesting to talk to you about that. And I think a great place I'd like to start with you, Tom, is you came to Animas. Coaching wasn't new to you when you found Animas. I believe you already had coach in your title at that time or just before. So I'd love to hear how you discovered Animas, made that decision to go for the diploma, given that you'd already got some coaching experience there.
yeah. Yeah, I guess I was a coach in a different way. So my title, yeah, was head coach of a graduate program. I've been involved in graduate development programs for a little while now. I love it. I absolutely love that kind of side of things and helping nurturing, you know, the young people and letting them grow into the business. So my role there as head coach was to recruit graduates, bring them into the business, and then deliver a technical training program to them over about 4 month period, where we teach them kind of data analytics skills as part of the company. It's a data analytics consulting firm that I worked for. Still do, just a different one version of it in Australia now. So part of that then is then to nurture the long-term growth and development of those people. And I really enjoyed that part of the role. That role then developed a bit more into the HR space, where I was role then head of people was then the role I had when I went to Animas. So I was then looking after the whole business from a development point of view. So ensuring our teams have the right environment to thrive in, whether that be technical training, career development coaching, well-being, bringing in, financial, beliefs, all manners of things. So we would have my mental health coaching from various companies. We had, access to therapists, to all that kind of stuff, financial health as well. So financial mentors for people to come and speak to, and financial advisors, sorry, I should say. So all of that well-being piece, looking after all of that. And the reason I got to Animas then was as a leadership team in the business, we all worked with an executive coach. We found a coach who one of our CEO knew, basically. And we started working with him all to have, one-to-one coaching with this particular coach. It was eye-opening for all of us in the leadership team to kind of go, okay, this is actually really powerful, really good. I also really enjoyed it, struck up a good relationship with the coach. And the kind of the second part for me then was, how do we distribute coaching across the business? And the idea there was that I would go and get trained in this type of coaching, so more the career development coaching, because I was very, good at the technical coaching and all that, but it was good there to go and get a formal education. Um, the certification or the qualification was nice, but it wasn't, a be all and end all. It was more getting that formal education and then bringing that back to the business. And then I would have done one-to-one leadership coaching with various people across the business at all sorts of different points of their careers. And yeah, bringing that back to the business was just really valuable for the company to have that experience in house. Um, so yeah, that's what I did. I've since left that company. I'd now joined the sister company of that company in Australia. So we have a kind of a dotted link between the two. And the link that joins the two companies is the graduate program. It's a franchise graduate program that we have down here in Australia. Now um, my role now is chief of staff essentially. So I kind of look after the whole end-to-end employee life cycle of everyone in that grad program. So it's a nice role that allows me to do the things I like, the coaching side, but also I get the other side of things which I like as well, which is that team building and and just being part of a bigger group of people doing a different thing as well. So it's I had a bit of time doing my own independent coaching alongside it, and I've had some clients that I've had privately, which is nice to have more as an add-on. I tried it on my own for a little while. Wasn't really for me, I don't think. But I just really enjoy going back to this graduate development. It's really nice, and the skills I've got from NLS have just given me a even more of a kick on really to go and do that kind of work and do it better. Yeah.
Thanks, Tom. Well, there's loads I could and would love to unpack
Mm.
in there, and a sort of whistle stop tour of you and your journey.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. I think initially what came up for me was you mentioned technical coaching versus career development coaching. I wondered if you could give us a little definition.
Yeah. So technical training really. But it's different. It's more of it is coaching. So we would, for example, we would do the training programs for our clients. So I would go out on site and do, a day or two of training in a particular technology, whether that be a analytics tool or something like that, or a process, whatever it is. We would go out and teach our clients. That's kind of the one end of the spectrum, very much technical training course that people have probably gone on and been part of those training programs at some point in their career. And then what we did in the graduate program was much more in depth, like a 4 month, real deep kind of program in terms of learning these tools to become, you know, in the top 10% of analysts in the country kind of thing within 4 months. That was kind of our, I mean, this was what we tried to do, and we're really good at it. But it's very much an intense training program where you are really giving you kind of learning these tools and data analytics really in depth. And I suppose so that was more the technical coaching. It's much more skill development. I'd say I then call career development coaching more around the identifying what it is you want to do longer term, looking more maybe at communication side of things. So I do a lot of communications coaching now as well. A big thing for us in our business is managing stakeholders, presenting key insights to, a variety of people. If they're working at the C-suite, for example, you're talking about graduates, it's kind of how do you pitch various things to different audiences. So I do more coaching around that side of things these days, presentations, all of these kind of topics which aren't necessarily the technical skill development. It's I hate using the word soft skills, but I can't think of a better word for it sometimes as well. Yeah. So I guess that would be my definition of the two. Yeah. But,
Thanks, Tom. It sounds a little bit like the definition. I remember when we learned the difference between like sports coaching, which is about
mm,
refining your technique, and it's a little bit more like mentoring in my head. You're being taught,
yeah.
this is the best way to do it, and you're constantly owning like your backhand shot in tennis, or you stroke if you
Yeah.
swim, for example, versus the
Yeah.
transformative coaching we learned about in Animas, which was less about a transfer of knowledge and more
Yeah.
about becoming, cultivating more self-awareness and the answers being within.
Yeah.
I think we once said that the mind with the problem is the mind with the solution, that kind of principle.
Yeah, and I've definitely taken what we learned at Animas and adapted it to fit more closely what I need in my role as well. I think even when I'm doing kind of data and I saw my private coaching practice, I've kind of tried to merge a little bit. Like I find that going purely down the transformative coaching side is fine for a lot of use cases, but for some, sometimes people need to just have a bit of a steer or answer, or I might share a few examples because I've got experience of doing that thing that they're trying to do. And it's just talking a bit and making more of a conversation sometimes as well. And, giving some experiences and know how. And this is, what we've done or I've done in the past, or so and so else had this problem's done. And just giving them a bit, especially when you're talking graduates sometimes as well. It's kind of you can't expect them to know everything. I guess it depends on the life experience you've got. So I think you've got to just take a little bit of it and figure out what that person might need at that time as well, and help them, meet them where they are really. So there's definitely elements of the transformative coaching that I'd stick to, but there's times now I find where I'm adapting it a bit more and merging a bit of the sports coaching side and the transformative. And I think, yeah, everyone probably just gone through the same journey themselves.
Thanks, Tom. It's interesting. There's quite a few coaches I've spoken to recently who brand themselves as a coach and a mentor, as they're
Mm.
bringing a lot of their industry knowledge and experience into the conversation. And just wondering how you, in a conversation, how you would bridge that gap. And, because in my head, you're in that grey zone between being a coach and withholding advice, being a mentor and imparting advice. Just wondering how you do that.
Yeah, I think it's calling it out beforehand and say, like, I think if you say, would you mind if I share some experience from my own time when I saw this and let them elect into it? Like, yes, so yeah, I'm happy for you. So you're not just spraying advice at somebody, you're kind of inviting them to say, well, look, I've been there before. You kind of give them a bit of comfort like this. Many people have gone through this. Would you like to hear kind of some of my suggestions, or would you like to hear what I did when I found myself in that situation, or what so and so 4 months ago found themselves in and how they got around it, that kind of thing. So inviting them in, letting them opt to hear that, and then I suppose it's just helping them from there, really. That's how I manage it.
So it's asking for their permission beforehand
That's
before jumping in with the advice.
It's asking permission. It's making clear that you're gonna be doing it. I suppose it depends if, yeah, and then I guess it's being very clear that this is an experience that I've lived or someone else has had. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be right for them. And don't necessarily say that you have to do it like this because that's how it's done before. But this is a bit of information that I'm going to share with you. You can take it or leave it or whatever. I don't care. But this might help you. It might not. But here's a bit of information that you can take and use however you like. That's what I've kind of said a few times. Yeah.
It-
Um,
It's interesting, Tom. How we're both from the sort of tech sector background. You with a mixture of data as well. One of the things in your profile and your work that really resonates with me is how you have an interest, a special interest in working with IT data tech, let's say specialists that have reached that point in their career where they're fantastic at what they do, and it's time for them, whether it's initiated by them or initiated by their company, it's time for them to take that next step in their career and go for that manager or leadership role for the first time. And quite often people are promoted through being fantastic at their job, and then there's nothing or there's very little there to bridge that gap from being a specialist, like a subject matter expert, to a leader. And that's something I struggled with in my career as well, was how on earth do I bridge that gap? I'd love to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, it's something we see massively in the tech sector and as a whole, isn't it? People naturally uh, promote good employees rather than the people who are going to be good managers, especially in smaller companies as well, where you kind of have this, there's only so many people, and it's natural that the ones who've been there a bit longer and have done well are going to get that promotion. And then you start building a structure around management, and it's natural that the ones being longer are going to end up being managers. But you then soon realize a couple of years down the line that maybe that wasn't the right person to take on that role. But then it's kind of okay. You've got two options. You either somehow find other people to be managers, which isn't really going to work. Then it's kind of how do you support those people, I think, is the better way of approaching it. So how do you actually give those people the skills they need to be managers? And I think it's a two-pronged attack. You've got the actual technical training, like formal education piece, which is missing. And that's what we did at our last company. We actually, two aspects of it. We sent any people manager off to do an external people management course over a couple of days. which we got really good feedback from. Kind of good to go out and meet other people at different companies who are going through similar process themselves. That was nice. And then we developed our own internal leadership development program, which was very much aimed at our business with our specific needs. And everyone went through that. And then the people who were going to people management did a bit more, basically. So that's one side, the kind of technical training aspect of it. And then there is the coaching aspect of actually let's spend 6 sessions or whatever it is together and actually talk about your experience in particular. And that's where I then might lean into a bit of, well, this is what you've been doing. Or, I think sometimes it's almost a blend of coaching and mentoring then as well. I'd say it's kind of that person, there is a skills gap sometimes. So they do need a bit of a push sometimes as to these are the things you could try and it might not work, but here's some things to try. And I've always led in with new managers when I've been coaching them into an exercise whereby we look through all the good managers that they've had in their time and all the bad managers that they've had in their opinion, the good and bad ones, and picking out all the traits that they've seen and just doing an exercise where they write them all out basically and help them craft their own leadership management style that's going to work for them and what their role is. So you almost using their experiences to almost give them the particular traits that they can then pick or not pick, and then helping them form their own style, really. I think it's important that, you can't just carbon copies of people across the business. Like, you need to be your authentic self in management. Of course, there's traits that you need to develop. You can't just use that as a shield. Oh, that's just what I'm like. I don't care. That's what I'm like. So, hey, people say that's what I'm like. It's such a cop out. Anyway, so yeah. So not using, but allowing people to find what works for them and for their team as well. And I then also I do like 360 feedback with people as well. So I go and talk to their reportees and ask them, what's going on with this person, what's working, just encourage that whole kind of development growth mindset across the whole team, really. Yeah.
Thanks, Todd. But you mentioned some of those. I forget what word you used. The things you used to describe people's best. Was it traits, character traits,
Great.
traits of
Yeah.
traits of their best leaders, or the traits of their
Yeah.
worst leaders? I wondered if
Yeah.
there's some perhaps some themes that come up there. I'm sure everyone can relate.
Yeah. I think a lot of it comes down to, well, I'll go off on a tangent for a little bit slightly, which is around that kind of idea of, I think some managers think that they're, um,
Empowerment.
oh, and some empowerment, that's the one. Yeah. That idea of empowerment versus abandonment, I think is often one that comes up. So, well, sorry, there's three bits. There's the micro, everyone hates micromanagers, basically, is the key, is one of the main ones. And then you've got people who go down the opposite route of abandonment, which is there's a job, go and do it. And almost like if I check in with you, then that means that somehow I'm a micromanager. And it's that difference between empowerment to give people what they need and establishing a right frequency that they're going to check in and how you're going to get support from them. And some people's like, oh, I'm here to help. Okay, cool. How? Um, it's that kind of I am here, or we're going to check in once a week about this, and I'm going to ask you questions, or you can ask me questions. And I'm going to be available to support you. That more empowerment side versus the abandonment, whereby it's, oh, yeah, I'm not going to ask you to get any help, or I'm not going to check in. That's yours now, kind of thing. Crack on. Which I think is the complete opposite end of the micromanagement side of things, which people want some sort of encouragement and care, I guess. Care is one that would come up a lot in terms of the good traits. Someone who actually has genuine care in what they're doing and their own development. People that are fair. Trust is a massive one that will often come up. People who can, foster trust. You feel like you're safe to take a risk in some way, and they're not gonna, it's not gonna come back on you if something backfires. It's kind of that more of a company culture as well. I feel that with trust, but managers ultimately are the ones who spread that culture as well. So yeah, those are things I guess a lot of the traits is the opposites, right? So it's trust and a lack of trust. There's what else can I think of that's not so good? Um, I think people who have respect for boundaries is a massive one as well. So, you know, simple as receiving emails outside of hours, which is, just something which is fine if that's not expected back, but it's that kind of level of expectation as well that sometimes gets brought into it all. So yeah, there's a few there that I've seen, but yeah, those are
It's
the main ones.
thanks for sharing, Ty. It's the little things. I had a leader who did used to send emails out of hours, and he used to put in his email signature, "I work flexibly. If I email you at 11 p.m., I don't expect to reply until your working hours." And it's just
Yeah,
that little one sentence was like permission for me as his
yeah,
employee to not feel the need to reply. And sometimes we forget the power of the little things like that.
mm,
Took no time at all for him to add to his email signature, but it really put that message out to everyone.
yeah. Or just setting up a auto, send. I've seen that happen a few times. If you do click send up outside of hours, it just waits until 8 in the morning or whatever and sends it then. So it's doesn't even give someone notification. So that's another thing as well. But yeah, all those little things are really powerful. Yeah, good.
I like what you said as well about empowerment versus abandonment.
Mm,
For me, when you were saying that, was it's a little bit like if you have a friend who's just had some bad news, the difference between sending a text saying, "Let me know if there's anything I can do," versus we're having a pizza and movie night next Thursday. You're welcome to come along and join us. It's like the invitation versus just
yeah,
let me know if there's anything I can do, which nobody ever does, typically. And
yeah.
feels a bit more like a token gesture versus a genuine like invitation.
Yes, I completely get you. Yeah, it's that. Especially it depends on your relationship with that person as well, right? If it's someone who's a lot more senior than you and you're not quite sure yet in the working relationship how it's going to work, then it's a bit tricky. Oh, can I ask for your time? Can I actually ask for your time, or are you just saying that because sometimes when you've got a good, strong relationship with someone, it's like, yeah, I'm going to come and just ask you, and you've kind of built up that level of trust, and that's how we're going to work together. And I think then it's kind of okay. You've got that time that you can go in and you can ask those questions and go and get that time from somebody, and it's okay. Yeah.
Well, just caveat that I'm not suggesting people go and invite their manager for pizza and movie night next.
It's a cold call, right? Especially when they turn up. Yeah.
Well, Tom, I wouldn't forgive myself if I didn't ask you sort of my burning question to this interview. I know that a little bit similarly to myself, after doing the Animats transformative diploma, you went on a bit of a personal journey. You did some international travel, places like India and Australia. And without stealing your thunder, I know you set up a coaching business as well. And then, made that decision to move back into the world of work, back into, where your passion is and what you enjoyed after taking that period of break. I'd just love to hear more about kind of what did you learn about yourself in that process? And, you know, tell us about your adventure.
Yeah, I took, was it, yeah, 4 months off to travel our way to Australia with my partner. Yeah, so we made the decision to come out here, and it was like, well, let's just take a break. It's like I just don't want to. Why we spend our whole lives working just to have a retirement at the end doesn't really make much sense to me. So I thought, kind of often try to find ways of finding breaks between things, natural breaks, and just taking time out. And I guess it's a privilege that you're able to do that. Not everyone can, but yeah, it's nice to be able to do that, especially before any kids and what have you come along. It's nice to enjoy that bit of freedom and go and do some stuff. So yeah, no, India was amazing. It was definitely a eye-opening experience in terms of just a different culture. Let's say you get a different culture you go elsewhere in the world, but it really was a different thing. Like it was a proper absence of Westernness, if that makes any sense at all. Like even when you go to Thailand or Vietnam or whatever, it's kind of like the elements of Western life is still there. Like there's chains there, there's other things that they want to do. People are wearing football shirts, like Premier League football shirts, everywhere you go. Like that, you go to India, I didn't see one thing anywhere. Like there's no sign that the Western world exists. Like it's so 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 Indian. It sounds daft, doesn't it? But it is so different. As well as seeing how some people live as well, right? I think that's a huge eye opener. And when you think about some of the stresses and struggles that we might have, and you think actually it's really not that big a problem. We're pretty blessed with where we are and what we do and all the things that we have, and you kind of take for granted. So, and also just being a really, really cool place to be and to see things, which is good. And yeah, continuation of that as we kind of carried on through Southeast Asia. Yeah, it was yeah, really good. Just nice to have a break then as well. I think it was proper proper switch off and just forget about everything. And it's funny, some people who talk about kind of not really knowing what to do if they stop working. And I don't know, I think there's something trapped in your brain if you can't think of something you'd want to go and do. Like there's so much. God, give me another year and I'll be fine, plenty to do. So yeah, but it was nice to, I think as well, actually, what we probably missed. Like it was nice to be on the road and be traveling, but I kind of really wanted some sort of sense of home afterwards. It was kind of like, okay, it's nice being on the road and doing lots of cool stuff and doing lots of fun stuff, but I kind of just want to have an evening where I'm just sat at home and, you know, in my own space and doing, you know, not an awful lot necessarily. So yeah, that was quite interesting by the time I got to the end of that and getting to Australia and setting up our little our little home over here. Yeah, it's just been good. Yeah.
Thanks, Tom. I know we could go on for hours talking about travels. I was
People
thinking,
will turn off soon.
yeah, it's so overused to say it changes your perspective. It's
Uh,
an overused term, but it genuinely does. It sort of gives you a new lens through which you can see
mm,
life. And I'm infinitely grateful for my experiences, and it comes back, and I think it reduces the magnitude of the problems that you perceived as huge before, as you
yeah,
is that they're not really that big, and there's people
yeah,
out in the world living with much bigger problems. Uh, you
mm,
know, So yeah, we could go on for hours about that, and hopefully
yeah.
will.
Yeah, I don't get as annoyed by getting a 5 minute delay waiting for the tram anymore. It's not a big deal. Whereas before it might have been a massive to my day. It's just not that big a deal. Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, I remember I'd love to touch on sort of your experience with Animas. I remember studying with you and seeing you tune into the call each time with the harbour in the background. At that time, you were
Yeah.
coast in the UK, a whole other life ago. And I seem to recall you got a lot of value from that course, as did we all. So I'd love to hear, what was your experience?
My experience. Yeah, it was good. Like, I think I came into the program from a quite a different reason that a lot of people did. I think a lot of people came in there because they wanted to establish their own independent coaching practices. And they kind of made a decision that they were going to either come back to work via that channel or do a kind of career change into coaching. For me, it was more about how do I enhance what I currently do and add another skill to the portfolio, really. So that's how I was kind of coming into the course and trying to approach it. Um, how did I find the course? It was fantastic in terms of I'm not sure what I expected. I knew that I wanted to go into some sort of coaching, and I saw a lot of programs that were much more kind of executive coaching, leadership coaching, all that kind of much more corporate focused. So I chose Animus because it wasn't that. It was much more of a broader, more life coaching. I'm not sure if that's still a right term to use, but yeah, it's more of that transformed coaching side, which was an interesting angle for me, and it meant that I met a lot of people who were in completely different worlds, and loads of good connections. But a lot of people who came from the business kind of world, and a lot of people who were coming from all manners of different walks of life, which was great. I think that was a real highlight of Animas to me, was just all the different backgrounds we had and the different things we wanted to go and use coaching for. Um, yeah, the I guess the all the skills that we learned were great, and all the kind of very transferable straight away into the type of coaching I wanted to do, and also kind of how I could go and use it elsewhere. So yeah, no, it was all really good stuff. I always looked forward to those sessions every month, whatever they were. Yeah, it was really good, and yeah, highlighted the week really. Yeah.
Glad to hear it. Thanks for sharing, Tom. I know that you're still in touch with some delegates now, and I think you've done some reciprocal coaching or worked with some of the other people on the course since
Yeah, yeah,
Beatrice's show. I was on Beatrice's show last week as well.
yeah, yeah. No, it's good. Yeah, me and Beatrice kind of started that up together, and then when I went off, I kind of passed the mantle to her to take it on full time. I just didn't have the energy to be doing that for whilst I was traveling and what have you. So no, I'm glad to see how she's taken that on. It's really good, and no, I mean, there's tons of people. I mean, I'd go on all day about everyone there, but yeah, no, I've been fine, coaching others and people's family and friends and what have you as well who have introduced me, and vice versa. It's, I've introduced colleagues that, to some of my team as well. Kind of, yeah, got someone from my team in my company who I wanted to, get some coaching, but it was too close really for me to be coaching her. So I introduced her to one of the Animas, yeah, one of the Animas crew to teach to coach, and yeah, some others as well who I've introduced to the likes of Beatrice, yeah, as well as coach one of my colleagues as well. So yeah, it's quite in a really good, friendly network, and just nice, just really good people, really, isn't it? I'm sure you feel the same way.
Yeah, it's interesting. We talk, in these interviews, people often talk about the value of the course and the things they learn about themselves and how they, how it affected their lives and their relationships. But I think what we don't talk about is just the value in connecting with the other delegates that very often
Mm,
become friends. The cohort sizes for Animas are quite small, so deliberately by design. So there's quite an intimate
yeah,
atmosphere there. People sort of train together, learn and grow and develop together. And as Jason
yeah,
says on his podcast, that's the best way to, build a relationship is through learning something new together. Then that definitely happened in our cohort, and I know it happens all the time. Um, it's more common than a little that people then go away afterwards and maybe, like you say, start a show together or share clients and continue to share that journey of personal growth, personal development. The work doesn't stop when the sessions end. You know,
no, not at all. Yeah,
Probably,
no,
probably, I don't know. It might begin there, a bit like when you pass your driving test. You begin
yeah,
as soon as you pass your test. That's when the learning really starts. Maybe it's like that.
100%. Yeah, yeah. No, it is. And it's the same principle that we apply in our graduate program. You bring people in a cohort of people, and then in a small group, we do groups of 8, and they sit in a room for 4 months together and they learn all these skills. And it's a great way. And then, you know, years later, they're still friends and what have you, and helping each other out. And it's the same approach that Animus has, which is great. It's good that you kind of join that cohort of people who are all there, the same people every month, and it's I think that's a really important aspect of it as well. So yeah, yeah,
And I guess management and leadership is similar to coaching in that you could learn everything about it, do all of the courses, but the learning really starts when you start actually doing it and you're suddenly
mm,
dropped, both feet in. the deep end and you have a
yeah,
team and you're suddenly a manager for the first time, and then you're literally learning. You've got that knowledge from the courses and the training, a bit like we do as a coach. We have that knowledge, but till we actually sit down with someone as a coach and a coachee, kind of, and I guess what I'm saying, what was really helpful in the course was that we did a great deal of that. So my first coaching session, I think, was in like module 1 or 2 that I delivered in a little practice breakout room versus starting to learn how to coach after the course. Wasn't like that at all. So I found that really valuable because I learned by doing.
yeah. Yeah, you have to practice these skills, right? It's the same with communications training or presentations, whatever it is. Like you have to practice these skills. You know, they don't just you can't just read a book and suddenly become a coach overnight. So no, the way that we set up the triads and all that kind of stuff with observers and um, and then the kind of the more practice groups between the training as well, kind of creating those small groups that we then went and practiced in. That was really good, and you know, just it was a real safe space, and even that was also like the observing that we did as well. So kind of those sessions where someone would volunteer to coach or be coached, and we kind of all be in that group. I can't forget how it was kind of branded or called, but it was that kind of almost like a live demo and practice sort of thing, which I think was a nice way of observing what others were doing, and then just again, like similar to the management style, right? You've got to take your own style and say, all right, what they did was really good, or oh, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure I could do that. And it's not me. But then other stuff that people were doing, I go, oh yeah, I really resonate with that style. To try and practice that myself next time. And I remember actually when we were doing the practice bits, um, we kind of said, this is something I'm going to practice in this demonstration bit or whatever, or this practice room, so you could actually call out something that I was specifically going to try and work on. It's like swimming, right? I'm into my swimming. If you try and change everything about your stroke in one session, you're not gonna have a good swim. But it's like practicing one thing at a time because it all kind of flows in sync, right? So practicing your breathing or whatever, or I'm going to practice my rotations or whatever. But if you try and so it's quite good. I quite like that approach of coaching. It was, I'm going to practice pausing, in this room. I'm going to actually just practice holding a pause. So yeah, I quite like that idea of it as well, and the feedback as well was really good. Everyone, very constructive, safe space to give proper feedback and learn from it as well. And you got really good feedback, like really strong. Okay, yeah, that could have been better, that what have you. But it was always in a real kind way as well, which is good.
Tom, sort of as we start to draw to a close, I'd just like to ask you one sort of final question. And I want to make you blush by reading just a sentence of a recommendation you've got on LinkedIn.
Oh,
So
okay.
you might recognize who it was by. Not from me, someone in your team. Tom was my manager and played a pivotal role in my career. Having a manager who is also a coach and such an inspiration is something else. His commendable ability to address challenges has always saved us from potential setbacks. Wow. My question is, how could a manager or leader in a company who's considering adding coaching to their skill set, how could they benefit? What would they be set to gain by, you know, maybe studying for the coaching diploma with Animas?
Listen, I think that recommendation came from one of my direct team actually. I think I know who that is. But yeah, I remember them writing to me. Yeah, it allows you to develop that person in a different way to kind of how you would normally. So I can have a conversation with them, which is much more objectively about their own career development outside of that business. I said to my team, really, like, how can I help grow you, into whatever things you want to do? And, I'm sure that we can help you do that as a company for the next couple of years. And it might be a case that you want to move on eventually, but I want to support you in doing that. So the coaching side of things, it it just gives you a proper skill set in how to develop and nurture your talent, right? And if they are doing good work, then you do well as well, right? So it's just a nice kind of cycle of everyone doing good stuff. But it allows you to kind of, I guess, I've noticed actually that the active listening side of things as well is another aspect which really I've learned a lot more about body language. Um, as men, we're not great at it. So our partners might say. But I've certainly learned a lot more about reading people as well, which is, I guess, a trait which is good to have when you have it. Outside thing as well is like coaching is great for those one-to-one relationships with your team and helping them grow and develop. But it also you can start to apply it elsewhere. So I mean, I would then, we did like strategy workshops as a leadership team, that kind of thing, and being able to bring in some of that active listening, things like I remember implementing an idea, which was we'd go around the room and everyone would give us, 30 seconds of what they thought on something, and time them out and move on. And everyone listens to what that person says. We move around the room until everyone's had something to say on it. And then we come back and discuss. So all of those little things that you start to pick up, which are all things from Hanimas and from coaching, but you can start applying them elsewhere in your day-to-day work as well. So it's not limited just to how do I help my individual team grow? It's very much a way of working that's just a lot kinder and smoother and just better, really. Yes.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you so much for that and for your time today. As a final question, is how can we contact you? Where can we find you? If someone's really resonated with your story and wants to reach out and get in touch, how can they do that? And have you any final closing words? If there's someone watching this video who resonates with your story and is perhaps just on the cusp of signing up for the course, considering taking that leap of faith and training to become a coach, is just not sure whether it's going to be the right thing for them, what would you say to them?
Cool. The first bit around the where people find me, LinkedIn's the best way. So I'm sure you can link up to my link to my LinkedIn. And yeah, you can send me a message there. For the second part, what would I say to that person? Yeah, I don't want to say the obvious, just do it. That's I kind of like, what do you have to lose by adding all these skills to your tool set? Like, I've seen it. Maybe the fear might be, oh, am I actually going to use it and become a coach? And I've dabbled in that myself. Of kind of, well, do I actually want to become a full-time coach? And I'm still not sure if I ever do, but it's a great thing to add to kind of your portfolio of skills and work. And it's, you can use it as a way of supplementing your income as well, right? If you're only doing 2 or 3 clients ever at a time, then you can charge some nice high fees for that as well. So that kind of demand can help. So it's a nice way that you can enrich the kind of work that you do. For me, actually, being able to add a bit of coaching into my day job was really powerful in the sense that I got to do some really impactful, meaningful work where I was starting to lose a little bit of it because I was kind of getting away from that day to day interacting with people because of the nature of kind of having in more meetings and what have you. So it might be a skill that you can just add to your bow and it might get you doing more of that work that you really love doing, you know, without having to be a big changing career at the same time. So yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Thanks, Tom. Coaching is another string to your bow as a leader.
There you go. That's the title. Yeah.
Love it. Thanks, Tom.
Cool.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, David. Yeah, really great to chat. Thank you very much. Bye.